"The nerve of some people," I whispered, staring at the gleaming countertops of my brand new kitchen. I had dreamed of this moment for years, and finally, at 68, I was standing in my retirement home by the sea, breathing in the salt air, and feeling proud of what I had built after decades of careful work. Then the phone rang, and my world tilted. "Julie, my daughter-in-law," Teresa's voice chirped through the line, sweet as sugar but sharp enough to cut. "We've decided to spend Christmas at your beach house. Me and my 20 relatives will be arriving Christmas Eve and staying through New Year's. Have everything ready." I gripped the edge of the counter until my knuckles turned white. 20 people? For 8 days? Without so much as a question, let alone an invitation? Teresa spoke like she was booking a hotel room, not invading the home I had purchased with my own life savings. I forced a smile into my voice. "Of course, dear. I'll have everything ready." She hung up before I could say more, satisfied she had just solved her holiday plans. The silence that followed was louder than any storm. I stood in my spotless kitchen, the ocean rolling just beyond the windows, and felt a heat rise in my chest, not from the fireplace, but from the audacity of it all. Only 5 months earlier I had signed the papers for this house, a 5-bedroom sanctuary with wide decks, a stone fireplace, and enough space for me to finally live the life I wanted. My late husband Alan would have been proud. After he passed 10 years ago, I learned to manage every dollar, every document, every responsibility. For decades I had taught history at the local high school, saving each check with the dream of one day retiring somewhere peaceful. This house was not just bricks and wood, it was proof that I had survived, adapted, and created a future on my own terms. And now, with one smug phone call, Teresa planned to turn it into her personal lodge. I walked to the window, watching the waves crash against the shore, and let the anger settle into something colder, sharper. I knew this routine. Teresa had always been sweet in front of my son Bradley, but underneath was a streak of entitlement a mile wide. She liked to present her decisions as gifts, opportunities for me to be included. But this wasn't an invitation. This was a takeover. 20 relatives, 8 days, in my home, at Christmas. I imagined the scene. Joan and Sean, her demanding parents, sprawling across my master suite. Kelly and Mason, her sister and brother-in-law, letting their children smear peanut butter across my furniture. Bobby, the teenage cousin, stomping through my living room with sandy shoes. I pictured my carefully polished floors covered in crumbs, my linens ruined, my peace obliterated. But more than that, I thought about the money. This house was not only my sanctuary, it was also an investment. During peak holiday weeks, families paid thousands for the privilege of staying here. I had bookings lined up months in advance, inquiries pouring in. Christmas week alone could bring in nearly $10,000. And Teresa thought I should hand it all over for free. The injustice twisted in my chest, but slowly a different thought pushed its way in. What if I didn't refuse? What if I agreed sweetly, calmly, and then taught her and her entire clan the most expensive holiday lesson of their lives? I sat down in the armchair by the window, the one that faced the sea, and felt the smile spread across my lips for the first time that day. They expected me to play the meek hostess, cooking, cleaning, and absorbing the cost of their invasion. Instead, I would prepare invoices, menus, and receipts. If Teresa wanted a hotel, then I would give her one at market price. The seagulls cried overhead, as if cheering for me, and the waves pounded steady encouragement against the shore. I picked up my notepad and began to write. Master Suite, $600 per night. Family Suites, $450 per night. Children's bunks, $300. Cleaning fee, damage deposit, resort tax. By the time I set the pen down, my anger had turned into something far more powerful: resolve. I poured myself a glass of wine, raised it toward the horizon, and whispered to the empty room, "Oh, I'll have everything ready. All right." Christmas was going to be very different this year. The morning after Teresa's phone call, I woke before sunrise. The sky was painted in soft shades of lavender and gold, the ocean whispering through my open window. Normally, that view filled me with peace, but on this morning my mind was already racing. 8 days, 20 people. The cost of food alone could sink a small ship. And the rental income I would be losing? I reached for my calculator, then laughed at myself. After 30 years of teaching teenagers how to do math the hard way, I could estimate well enough without a machine. I poured coffee, sat at the kitchen island, and scribbled numbers across a yellow legal pad. If I rented my house to tourists during Christmas week, I would earn close to $10,000. Add in utilities, cleaning, and wear and tear from so many bodies, the real loss climbed higher. And Teresa had the gall to say they'd chip in a few hundred for groceries. A few hundred would barely cover milk and cereal for 20 mouths. I circled the number in bold strokes, 10,000 lost income. My chest tightened. For most people, that might just be a number. But for me, every dollar represented years of sacrifice. I hadn't been born into money. Alan and I built our lives brick by brick, paycheck by paycheck. When he passed 10 years ago, people assumed I would crumble. Instead, I learned to stand straighter. I found a trusted ally in Judy Williams, my accountant and dear friend. Together, we made sure that everything I owned, my pension, my savings, even this dream house was protected and working for me. I dialed Judy's number. She picked up on the second ring. "Julie," she said, her voice warm and brisk, "you sound like you're already planning trouble." "Not trouble," I replied, stirring sugar into my coffee. "Education. For my daughter-in-law and her 20 relatives." There was a pause, then laughter. "Tell me everything." I explained Teresa's phone call, her assumption that my home was now her free holiday resort. Judy let me finish before responding. "Well, let's price this properly then," she said, sliding into business mode. "Peak season, waterfront property, 5 bedrooms, full amenities. You're looking at least $4,500 per week. For 8 days, call it nearly $10,000. And that's before service fees, cleaning, and damage deposits." Her numbers matched mine. It was oddly comforting to have them confirmed by someone else. "Perfect," I said. "I'll need invoices, service menus, maybe even a credit card reader." "Julie," Judy teased, "you're about to run the finest holiday hotel in the county." "Exactly," I answered. "If Teresa wants a hotel, she's going to get one." After we hung up, I opened my laptop and began shopping. A portable printer. A stack of invoice templates that looked official enough to frame. A credit card reader that would connect directly to my phone. By the time I clicked confirm order, I was smiling. The satisfaction wasn't just about money, it was about control. For too many years, I had been told what I could or couldn't handle. After Alan died, Bradley worried endlessly, asking if I should move in with him and Teresa. Friends suggested a retirement community. Even strangers, when they learned I was widowed, tilted their heads with pity and spoke slower, as if grief had stolen my hearing. But I had built a new life. Alone, yes. Independent, absolutely. And now I would prove that I was not someone's burden, but a woman capable of defending her boundaries with style. I spent the afternoon walking through each room of the house, imagining how it would look once Teresa's family arrived. The master suite, with its king-sized bed and private balcony, would be assigned to her parents. I could already hear Joan complaining about the mattress, Sean demanding extra pillows. My mind, I placed the invoice neatly on the nightstand, $600 per night. The children's room with bunk beds, $300. The 2 guest suites with ocean views, $450 each. I walked through the kitchen, already picturing myself handing out laminated rules of use. No dishes left in the sink overnight. No shrimp shells in the disposal. No exceptions. For the first time since Teresa's call, I felt something new excitement. That evening, as the sun sank into the sea, I sat on the deck with a glass of wine. The waves rolled in steady and sure like a heartbeat. I thought of Alan, how he would have chuckled at the plan. He always admired my stubborn streak. "Julie," he used to say, "when you finally draw the line, nobody dares step over it." I raised my glass to the horizon. "Here's to Christmas, Alan," I whispered. "They think they're coming for a free vacation. What they're really getting is the most expensive lesson of their lives." Christmas Eve arrived with the kind of quiet beauty that usually fills me with peace. The ocean was calm, the air crisp, the morning sun glinting off the waves like a million diamonds. I brewed my coffee, savoring the silence, knowing it would be the last moment of calm for days. By mid-afternoon, the invasion began. First came the roar of engines, one car, then another, then an entire convoy of vehicles pulling into my circular driveway like soldiers rolling into camp. 7 cars in total. Doors slammed, trunks popped open, voices shouted over the ocean breeze. I stood at the window, coffee mug in hand, watching as if it were a scene from a movie. Children spilled out, dragging stuffed animals and candy wrappers. Suitcases tumbled onto the gravel, some large enough to hide small refrigerators. Teresa emerged from the lead car in a flowing red coat, sunglasses perched on her head despite the winter light. She spread her arms wide as if she were presenting me with a gift instead of a takeover. "Julie!" she called, beaming. "Isn't this perfect? Everyone's so excited to be here!" Behind her came her parents. Sean Miller, tall and barrel-chested, barked orders like a retired general. "Joan, careful with the steps. Bobby, grab the luggage. Where's my medication bag?" Joan, pale and weary, clutched her back dramatically. "I need to lie down immediately, Sean. This drive has wrecked me." Kelly and Mason Garcia Martinez followed, their 3 children racing ahead like wild puppies. The kids dashed up my porch steps, already smudging fingerprints onto the glass door. Mason trudged behind, balancing a grocery bag so flimsy it tore halfway up the walk, spilling chips and hot dogs onto the ground. Then came Janet and Terry Brown, Teresa's aunt and uncle, each dragging coolers, folding chairs, and what looked suspiciously like a karaoke machine. I opened the front door with my sweetest smile. "Welcome," I said, my voice smooth as honey. "Please come in. I've prepared accommodations for everyone." The word accommodations made Teresa pause, but only for a second. "Perfect," she said, sweeping past me like she owned the place. The entryway filled quickly with people and noise. Suitcases banged against the walls. Children shrieked. Someone turned on music from a portable speaker, filling my quiet sanctuary with pounding bass. "Where should we put everything?" Sean demanded, hauling a suitcase nearly as big as he was. "Follow me," I replied, slipping into my role as hotel manager. "Mr. and Mrs. Miller, you'll be in the Ocean View Master Suite. It features a king-size bed, private bathroom with jacuzzi tub, and direct access to the deck." Joan brightened immediately. "Oh, thank goodness. Sean, bring my medication. This will do nicely." She began rearranging my personal toiletries on the dresser, as if it were already hers. I led Kelly and Mason to the adjoining guest rooms, complete with bunk beds for their children. The kids wasted no time jumping on the mattresses, their sandy shoes leaving dark smudges on the white comforters. "Kelly," I said pleasantly, "these rooms are perfect for families. 2 bedrooms, shared bath, plenty of space for your little ones." Kelly nodded, distracted as she tried to corral her children. Mason just dropped the grocery bag on the counter with a sigh. Next, I guided Judy and Terry toward the last 2 guest rooms. "Standard accommodations," I explained, handing them folded towels like a concierge. "Please note the rules for shared spaces will be provided shortly." Teresa trailed behind, arms crossed, watching me with a raised eyebrow. "You're being very formal about this, Julie," she said. I smiled wider. "I want everyone to feel welcome. After all, this is full-service accommodation." The words landed like pebbles in a pond barely noticed by most, but Teresa's eyes narrowed. She opened her mouth to respond, then thought better of it. By 6 o'clock, my house looked like a hurricane had passed through. Towels lay draped over chairs. Television volume blasted from 2 different rooms. Someone's teenage son was blasting music in the bathroom. In the kitchen, one of the cousins had already clogged the garbage disposal with shrimp shells. My collection of decorative seashell figurines sat broken on the floor. "Julie!" Teresa called from the kitchen, her voice carrying above the din. "What's for dinner? Everyone's getting hungry." I stood in the doorway, surveying the chaos. 20 expectant faces turned toward me, waiting for their hostess to deliver food, service, and gratitude. I set my coffee mug down, straightened my back, and felt calm wash over me. This was the moment I had been preparing for. "Actually," I said, my tone light but firm, "before we discuss dinner, I have some paperwork to handle." Their chatter stilled. Confused glances darted across the room. Teresa frowned. "Paperwork?" "Yes," I replied smoothly. Just a few forms. After all, this is a professional vacation rental property. I reached for the folder I had prepared, thick with invoices and printed policies. My fingers brushed the crisp edges, and for the first time all day I felt completely in control. The lesson was about to begin. The room was buzzing with hunger and expectation. Children whined, adults tapped their feet, and Teresa leaned against the counter like a queen awaiting her feast. I set my folder on the kitchen island and flipped it open with a deliberate calm. The papers inside gleamed, freshly printed and neatly organized. Each page bore a name, a room assignment, and a total. "Before we discuss dinner," I said, "we need to settle the matter of accommodations." The chatter died instantly. 20 pairs of eyes locked on me. Teresa frowned. "Accommodations?" "Yes," I answered sweetly. "Since you've chosen to spend 8 days here during peak season, I've prepared invoices for each room. Standard hospitality industry practice." I began handing out papers, moving around the room like a hostess at a conference. Sean Miller snatched his with a scowl. Kelly and Mason took theirs reluctantly. Janet Brown adjusted her glasses, squinting at the print. Teresa didn't take hers right away. She stood frozen, her manicured hand hovering uncertainly. Finally, she grabbed it and scanned the first line, her face drained of color. "What is this?" she demanded. "Your accommodation charges," I replied calmly. Sean's booming voice cut through the air. $600 per night for the master suite? Are you out of your mind?" "Not at all," I said. "That rate is already discounted. Market value for a waterfront master during Christmas week is closer to $700. Judy Brown let out a sharp laugh. $450 per night for a guest room? $300 for bunk beds? Julie, this is ridiculous." "Ridiculous would be me absorbing nearly $10,000 in lost income," I corrected gently. "These rates are fair. And, as you'll see at the bottom, I've included applicable cleaning fees, a refundable damage deposit, and resort taxes." The silence that followed was thick enough to chew. Papers rustled, faces flushed. Bobby, the teenage cousin, muttered something about highway robbery. Teresa slammed her invoice on the counter. "Julie, we are family. You can't seriously expect us to pay this." I folded my hands in front of me, keeping my tone light. "Indeed, we are family, and family doesn't impose without permission. Family doesn't assume free labor, free food, and free housing. Family respects boundaries." Sean's face turned crimson. "Boundaries? This is extortion." "Extortion," I said softly, "is when someone forces you into a deal you cannot refuse. You are free to leave at any time. There are hotels within driving distance, though I should warn you, availability on Christmas Eve is limited. Rates at even modest inns are well over $400 a night." A nervous murmur spread through the group. Someone pulled out a phone, typing frantically. Bobby looked up wide-eyed. "Mom," he said to Kelly, "everything online is booked. The cheapest place I can find is an hour away, and it's over $300 a night for one room." Kelly paled. Mason rubbed his forehead. Teresa's voice sharpened with desperation. "This is crazy. You can't treat us like strangers." "You made reservations for 20 people for 8 days, I said evenly. "I am providing exactly what you requested, premium beachfront accommodations during peak season. I'm simply running my business as intended." For a long moment, no one spoke. The only sounds were the waves outside and the faint hum of my refrigerator. Then Sean slammed his fist on the counter, making glasses rattle. "We are not paying this." "Then you are welcome to leave," I replied, meeting his glare without flinching. Teresa's hands shook as she flipped through the invoice again. She reached the line labeled "Total Due." $9,800. Her voice broke. $9,800? "Julie, this will ruin Christmas." I tilted my head. "No, Teresa. This will save Christmas. It will save it from entitlement, from disrespect, and from the assumption that my home is yours to command." Her lips parted, but no words came out. Around her, relatives exchanged uneasy glances. The math was sinking in. They had nowhere else to go, and I was holding all the cards. I closed the folder with a soft snap. "Now," I said pleasantly, "shall we talk about dinner? I do offer catering services, but those come with additional charges." Breakfast runs $75 per person per day, lunch $60, dinner between $100 and $150 depending on the menu. Joan gasped. This is outrageous. You expect us to pay for meals too? Of course not, I said smoothly. You are welcome to cook for yourselves. Use of the kitchen is normally an extra fee, but I'll waive it for the holidays. Teresa's face twisted, caught between rage and disbelief. She opened her mouth to argue again, but before she could, a phone buzzed loudly in her hand. The screen lit up with a familiar name. Bradley. My son. Every head in the room turned toward her. Teresa froze, the color draining from her face as she pressed the phone to her chest. And in that moment, I knew the real reckoning was about to begin. The room was frozen in silence when Teresa's phone buzzed in her hand. She glanced at the glowing screen, her face draining of color. My son's name, Bradley, filled the display. Every eye turned toward her. She pressed the phone to her chest as if hiding a weapon. It's Bradley, she muttered. Well, I said pleasantly, you'd better answer. He might want to know where his wife and 20 relatives disappeared to. Reluctantly, Teresa slid her finger across the screen and lifted the phone. Hi, honey, she said, her voice suddenly syrupy sweet. Yes, we made it. Everyone's here at Mom's house. We're just settling in. I stepped closer and extended my hand. Put it on speaker, I suggested. Her eyes widened. What? No, that's speaker, I repeated, my tone calm but firm. For a long beat, she hesitated. Then, under the weight of 20 stares, she pressed the button. Bradley's voice filled the room, deep and sharp with tension. Teresa, what in the world is going on? Mom just texted me a photo of invoices. She's charging you? What is this? Teresa's eyes darted around like a trapped animal. It's a misunderstanding, she said quickly. Mom's confused. She doesn't realize this is family. I folded my arms. Confused? I repeated softly. Bradley, would you like to hear exactly what happened? There was a pause on the line. Yes, Mom. Tell me. So I did. Calmly, clearly, without raising my voice, I explained Teresa's phone call 3 days earlier, her announcement that 20 people would be arriving for an 8-day stay, and the fact that I had canceled inquiries from paying guests worth nearly $10,000. $10,000, Bradley's voice cracked. Yes, I said. That's the income I lose by hosting this circus instead of tourists who would have gladly paid full price. The line went quiet. In the living room, Sean muttered under his breath. Joan clutched her pearls. Kelly and Mason stared at their shoes. Even Janet Brown, usually quick with a comment, stayed silent. Finally, Bradley spoke. His voice was low and dangerous. Teresa, is this true? You never told me you invited 20 people. Teresa flinched. I thought it would be a surprise. I wanted to bring the family together. Mom has this big house, and it seemed perfect. I didn't think. You didn't think, Bradley cut in. His voice hardened. You never asked me. You never asked Mom. You just decided. Tears filled Teresa's eyes, but not the manipulative kind she usually used. These were raw, panicked. Bradley, please, it's Christmas, we're all here. Can't we just enjoy it? Enjoy it? Bradley snapped. You dropped a $9,800 bill in my mother's lap without asking. Do you know what this makes you look like? What it makes me look like? Sean tried to intervene, puffing out his chest. Now, hold on, this is family business, not financial. Quiet, Bradley barked, his voice so sharp even Sean shut his mouth. On my end, I leaned casually against the counter, hiding the flicker of pride in my chest. My son had finally woken up. Mom, Bradley said after a long silence, his tone softer now. I'm sorry. I had no idea. If I'd known, I would never have allowed this. I know, sweetheart, I replied. That's why I'm handling it. Your wife and her relatives are staying under clear terms. Business terms. Bradley exhaled hard, the sound like a storm breaking through the line. Teresa, he said, we will be having a very long conversation when I get there. She began, but her voice faltered. Enough, Bradley said. For now, Mom, do what you need to do. I'll sort this out when I arrive. The line went dead. For several seconds, no one moved. The only sound was the distant crash of waves against the shore. Teresa lowered the phone slowly, her hand trembling. Her face, once so smug, now looked pale and hollow. She sank into a chair like a balloon losing air. Joan rushed to her side, rubbing her daughter's shoulders. There, darling. Your husband is just upset. He'll calm down." But the look on Teresa's face told me she knew better. For once, her performance had failed. I gathered the invoices from the counter and tapped them into a neat stack. "Well," I said cheerfully, "now that business is settled, shall we move on? Dinner, perhaps?" Nobody answered. 20 people sat stiff and silent, the reality of their situation settling over them like a heavy blanket. And I couldn't help it, I smiled. For the first time in years, I felt completely in control. The next morning, I woke at dawn to the sound of chaos downstairs. Cabinet doors slammed, water ran endlessly, and voices rose in sharp argument. By the time I descended, coffee mug in hand, my pristine kitchen looked like a storm had torn through it. Cereal boxes lay scattered across the counters. Milk pooled on the floor in sticky white puddles. A toddler smeared strawberry jam across my cabinet doors with the dedication of a budding artist. Joan had taken over my kitchen table with what looked like a mobile pharmacy, pill bottles, tissues, heating pads. "Good morning," I said pleasantly, though my teeth clenched behind the smile. "I see you've all discovered the kitchen." Teresa spun around, still in her silk pajamas, hair tangled from a restless night. "Julie," she groaned, "do you have any real cream? This powdered stuff is awful." "There's a grocery store about 2 miles down the road," I answered smoothly. "They open at 7. Sean stomped out of the pantry holding an empty cereal box. "This is ridiculous. 18 people can't survive on 1 box of cornflakes and a half bag of crackers." "You are absolutely right," I said, reaching for the laminated sheet I had prepared, "which is why I offer full catering services." I slid the sheet across the counter. Bold letters spelled out holiday menu. Breakfast, $75 per person per day. Lunch, $60 per person per day. Dinner, $100 to $150 per person, depending on menu. Housekeeping service, $100 per day. Grocery delivery, flat fee of $75 plus 20% service charge. The silence that followed was almost delicious. "You cannot be serious," Joan snapped. "I am perfectly serious," I replied. "You may, of course, cook for yourselves. Use of the kitchen normally requires an additional fee, but I'll waive it for the holidays." Janet Brown slapped the counter. "This is outrageous! Charging family for bacon and eggs?" I tilted my head. Family also doesn't invite themselves for 8 days, expecting me to cook, clean, and foot the bill. "This is not a bed and breakfast. This is a vacation rental property. You wanted a hotel, and I'm simply providing one." Teresa rubbed her temples, looking exhausted. For once, she didn't jump to argue. Instead, her voice cracked. "I just wanted us all together." The room stilled. I studied her carefully. "Together?" Tears brimmed in her eyes. "Ever since Grandma Rose died, the family hasn't been the same. We used to have big Christmas gatherings, all of us under one roof, laughing, eating, fighting a little, but still together. I thought, if I organized something, if I surprised everyone, maybe we could feel like that again." Her confession stunned the group. Kelly's jaw dropped. Mason looked down at the floor. Even Sean's bluster faltered. "You told us Julie invited us," Kelly whispered. Teresa winced. I panicked. When everyone said yes, I couldn't admit I hadn't asked. I thought once we were here, once Julie saw how happy we were, she'd be glad. "Glad?" I repeated softly. "To lose $10,000? To have 20 uninvited guests take over my home?" Teresa buried her face in her hands. "I didn't think about money. I thought about family." Joan reached for her daughter's shoulder. "Teresa, honey." But I raised a hand. "Family is important, I know that. But real family respects boundaries. Real family doesn't assume." Rose may have chosen to host, but she also planned, budgeted, and worked herself ragged to make those gatherings happen. You thought you could snap your fingers and recreate her magic without effort. Teresa looked up, mascara smudged across her cheeks. "I just wanted to prove I could do what she did." Sean shook his head. "Rose had 40 years of practice. You had 3 days." The truth landed hard. Around the room, shoulders slumped. Children grew quiet. Even Bobby, usually restless, sat still. I placed both hands on the counter. I am not Rose. I will not sacrifice my peace, my home, or my finances to make everyone else comfortable. If you want Christmas here, you will pay your share and follow the rules. If not, there's the door. Nobody moved. Finally, Mason cleared his throat. She's right. We took advantage. If we want this to work, we have to do our part. Kelly nodded reluctantly. Maybe we could pitch in, organize chores, shop for food ourselves. Teresa sniffled. I never meant to disrespect you, Julie. I was just desperate to keep the family together. I softened, though only slightly. Desperation does not excuse disrespect, but perhaps we can salvage something. If you want a family Christmas, then we'll do it the right way, organized, shared, with clear boundaries. Hope flickered in a few faces. Sean grumbled, but Joan squeezed his hand. The children perked up at the mention of Christmas. I allowed myself a small smile. Let's see if this family can work together instead of falling apart. But remember, hope is not a strategy. The waves outside crashed louder, as if punctuating my words. By the afternoon of Christmas Eve, the tension in the house had settled into something quieter, more cautious. After Teresa's tearful confession, the sharp edges of outrage dulled. No one was happy, but no one was shouting either. It was as if the storm had passed, leaving behind a heavy stillness. I stood in the living room, surveying the mess. Shoes scattered by the door, toys abandoned in corners, towels draped across chairs. It looked less like a home and more like a campsite. If we were going to survive 8 days together, something had to change. All right, I announced, clapping my hands once. If you want a family Christmas, we're going to do it right. That means organization, responsibilities, and cooperation. Otherwise, this whole gathering will collapse by tomorrow morning. Eyes turned toward me, wary but attentive. Kelly, I said, looking at my daughter-in-law's sister, you're good with kids. You'll handle child activities and logistics. Keep them busy, keep them safe, and keep them out of my cabinets. Kelly blinked, then nodded slowly. Mason, I continued, you'll be in charge of groceries and meal coordination. You seem practical, and frankly, I trust you more than anyone else here to handle money responsibly. Mason gave a small shrug. Fair enough. Sean and Joan, I added, fixing the older couple with a steady gaze, you're in charge of sleeping arrangements. If anyone wants to complain about mattresses, room temperatures, or pillow counts, they can take it up with you. Sean grumbled, but Joan's lips twitched. At least it will keep him busy, she muttered. Janet and Terry, I went on, you can handle cleanup duty, dishes, trash, basic tidying. Think of it as housekeeping. Janet opened her mouth to argue, but Terry nudged her and she subsided with a huff. And Teresa, I finished, turning to the woman who had caused all this, you're going to call Bradley and have him come down here tonight. Then you're going to learn how to organize a family gathering properly, instead of hoping it magically works out. Teresa looked down, cheeks blotchy from crying, but she nodded. Yes, Julie. Good. For the first time since they'd arrived, I felt the faint stirrings of order. Now, I said, I have one more surprise for you all. I led them out to the garage and pressed the button to lift the door. Inside, covered with moving blankets, stood the 12-foot Christmas tree I had purchased 2 weeks earlier. Its branches stretched wide, lush and green, perfect for a holiday spectacle. Gasps rippled through the group. Oh my goodness, Kelly whispered. It's beautiful. Even Sean's stern face softened. The children squealed, running circles around the tree like it was a prize at a carnival. I was planning to spend Christmas quietly, I explained, pulling off the blankets. Just me, a book, and this tree. But I suppose it can serve a bigger purpose. We'll need ornaments, Joan said practically. Already taken care of. I opened a stack of plastic bins along the garage wall, filled with lights, garland, baubles, and a star for the top. If we're going to have chaos in this house, it might as well be festive. For the next 3 hours, the house transformed. Sean and Mason wrestled the tree through the front door while the children giggled and shouted instructions. Kelly organized the little ones into decoration teams. Janet directed from the couch, complaining about color coordination, until Terry dragged her up to help string lights. I watched, amused, as my living room shifted from disaster zone to something resembling a holiday card. The scent of pine filled the air, mixing with the salty breeze through the cracked windows. For the first time since they'd arrived, I felt a flicker of warmth instead of dread. As twilight fell, the front door opened again. My son stepped inside. Bradley's tall frame filled the doorway, his coat dusted with snow. He looked from me to the enormous tree, to his wife standing awkwardly by the mantel. His jaw tightened. "Mom," he said, striding over to hug me. "I'm so sorry. I should have stopped this before it started." I patted his back. "You didn't know, sweetheart, but now you do." His eyes shifted to Teresa. She swallowed hard, her hands twisting in front of her. "Bradley," she whispered, "I'm sorry. For all of it. I thought I was helping, but I only made everything worse." For once, there was no defensiveness in her tone, no sugar-coated excuses, just raw remorse. Bradley's shoulders dropped. "We'll talk," he said simply. The tree lights flickered on, casting a soft glow across the room. The children cheered, clapping their sticky hands. For the first time all week, laughter, not tension, filled the air. I sank into my armchair, watching my fractured, chaotic family slowly, reluctantly, begin to look like a unit. Perhaps, against all odds, this Christmas could still be salvaged, but deep down, I knew the final lesson hadn't yet been taught. Christmas Day dawned clear and bright, the kind of morning that made the ocean look like polished glass. The children's laughter echoed down the hallway as wrapping paper flew across the living room. For the first time since they had arrived, the chaos felt normal, almost welcome. We spent the morning opening gifts, passing mugs of cocoa, and trying not to trip over ribbons and bows. Bradley stayed close to my side, a quiet anchor in the storm, while Teresa hovered nearby, subdued but determined to help. She gathered trash, wiped counters, and even joined the children on the floor, taping broken toy boxes back together. It wasn't much, but it was a start. By noon, the house smelled of roasted turkey and cinnamon. Mason and Kelly had wrangled the grocery list, Sean and Joan had kept the bedrooms tolerable, and Janet and Terry had, to my astonishment, actually handled the dishes without complaint. It wasn't perfect, nothing ever was, but it was functional. As we sat down to Christmas dinner, a hush fell over the table. Candlelight flickered across expectant faces. The meal tasted better than I expected, seasoned not only with salt and pepper but with reluctant cooperation. Halfway through the meal, Joan cleared her throat. "Julie," she said, her voice steadier than I'd ever heard it. "We owe you an apology. Yesterday, we thought you were being unreasonable. But the truth is, we were the unreasonable ones. We expected you to carry the burden without asking what it cost." Sean grunted, nodding. "She's right. We acted entitled. You set us straight." I dabbed my mouth with my napkin and gave a small smile. "Thank you. That means more than you know." Teresa shifted nervously in her chair. Her voice cracked. "Julie, I never meant to hurt you. I thought I was saving Christmas, but I nearly ruined it instead." I held her gaze. "Teresa, saving Christmas doesn't mean handing me chaos and expecting miracles. It means working together, respecting each other's boundaries, and planning ahead." She swallowed hard and nodded. "I understand. Truly I do." After dinner, when the table was cleared and the children were chasing each other around the decorated tree, I rose from my chair. "Before anyone leaves tomorrow," I said, "I have something for Teresa." Curiosity rippled through the room. I stepped into my office and returned with a thick folder, neatly labeled Williams Family Christmas 2025. I placed it in front of her. She blinked, confused. "What is this?" "Open it," I encouraged. With trembling hands, Teresa lifted the cover. Inside were pages of neatly typed charts, timelines, and budget templates. There were responsibility matrices, vendor contacts, and checklists for everything from menu planning to childcare. "It's a toolkit," I explained. "Everything you need to plan a family gathering properly, month by month, task by task. 6 months of preparation for an 8-day event." Teresa flipped through the pages, her eyes wide. "This is incredibly detailed." Bradley leaned over her shoulder. "Mom, this looks like a professional event plan. You could sell this." "I could," I said, "but I'd rather teach it to family." Rose ran herself ragged because she took on everything alone. That doesn't have to be your path. Janet leaned forward, peering at the charts. She's even broken down grocery budgets. And look, contingency plans for dietary restrictions. Terry gave a low whistle. No wonder Rose always looked exhausted. This is the work of a small army. Exactly, I said. But it doesn't have to drain one person. If you all commit to doing your parts, if you plan ahead, then gatherings like this can be joyful instead of disastrous. Teresa's eyes glistened. Julie, I don't know how to thank you for this, for hosting us despite everything, for teaching me how to do better. Thank me by following through, I said gently. Don't just hope things will work out. Hope is not a strategy. Bradley squeezed my hand, his voice thick with emotion. Mom, I've never been prouder of you. You taught us all a lesson we'll never forget. Around the room, heads nodded. Even Sean managed a gruff, she's right. The children darted past, laughter echoing. The tree lights sparkled against the window, reflecting a family that, against all odds, had managed to piece itself back together. Later that evening, as the last dishes were washed and the house grew quiet, I sat in my armchair by the window. The ocean stretched endlessly, the moonlight silver on the waves. My phone buzzed with a new message. It was from Teresa. Already started planning for next year? Thank you for giving me a second chance. I set the phone down, smiling faintly. At 68, I had learned something new. Boundaries didn't push people away. They gave relationships a chance to grow stronger. Outside, the tide rolled in, steady and sure. And for the first time in years, I felt both peace and possibility.